the hand in the water. A fishing trip to a remote creek. A friend request from a stranger. And a piece of clothing that should have stayed at the bottom of the water. What happened next to these three men will make you think twice before accepting that next message. The story. Greg Mitchell was no ordinary angler. At 30 years old, with 2 decades of fishing experience under his belt, he'd earned a quiet reputation among the tight-knit fishing community of upstate New York. From the age of 10, he'd spent countless hours alongside his grandfather on the docks and lakes along the Hudson River, mastering techniques that put even veteran fishermen to shame. The art of chumming, adjusting bobbers, and casting with precision that bordered on meditation. For most people his age, fishing seemed like a hobby for retirees. But Greg found something in those long, silent hours that the noise of bars and nightlife could never offer. The way sunlight fractured through leaves and danced on the water's surface. The hypnotic moment when a bobber trembled in the ripples. That was where he belonged. But paradise was shrinking. State environmental regulations had transformed the Hudson Valley, and one by one his favorite wild fishing spots disappeared behind no fishing signs. The commercial fishing ponds were a poor substitute, stocked with farm-raised fish that barely fought when hooked, robbing him of the primal tug-of-war that made fishing worth the wait. Desperate to find untouched waters, Greg joined 3 online fishing forums. Last Thanksgiving, a user named Marcus Brennan posted an invitation that caught his attention. Up north, near the town of Chatham, there was a hidden waterway called Blackwater Creek. According to local legend, someone had pulled a 30-pound largemouth bass from those waters. Greg expected a crowd, but the holiday kept most anglers with their families. Only 3 men showed up, Greg, Marcus, and a quiet, brooding man named Tyler Kovacs who barely spoke during the 2-hour drive north. Blackwater Creek. The creek looked like something out of a nightmare. Dead trees jutted from the muddy banks at unnatural angles, their bare branches clawing at the gray November sky like skeletal fingers. The water itself was dark, not the healthy dark of a deep river, but an oily, opaque black that seemed to swallow light. The air smelled of decay, of rotting vegetation and something else Greg couldn't quite place. Something metallic. Something wrong. But the fish? The fish were incredible. Within 3 hours their coolers were packed with fat bass and catfish, more than they'd caught in months at the regulated spots. About 50 yards downstream, a handful of local villagers worked their nets, occasionally glancing up at the outsiders with expressions Greg couldn't read. One of them, an elderly man wrapped in a moth-eaten wool scarf, shuffled over. His face was weathered, eyes milky with age, but his voice was sharp and urgent. "Listen to me," he said, gripping Greg's forearm with surprising strength. "If you hook something from the bottom, old clothes, fabric, anything that ain't a fish, you don't pull it up. You hear me? You cut your line. Remove your bobber. And you leave. You don't ask questions. You just go." Marcus laughed, slapping his cooler. "Come on, old-timer. You're just trying to scare us off so you can keep the fishing spot to yourself." The old man's expression didn't change. "I'm trying to keep you alive." Greg felt a chill that had nothing to do with the November wind. But Tyler just shrugged and Marcus was already baiting his hook again. They were educated men. Rational men. They didn't believe in superstitions. The first warning. 20 minutes later, a commotion erupted downstream. One of the villagers was shouting, cursing in a rapid-fire dialect Greg couldn't follow. The man's fishing rod was bent almost double, but when he finally hauled his catch to shore, there was no fish. Just a gray mud-caked t-shirt, dripping and shapeless. The fisherman's face went white. Without a word, he tore the bobber from his line and grabbed scissors from his tackle box. Snip. The fabric dropped back into the water with a soft splash. The villagers gathered their equipment in frantic silence and left, abandoning even their nets on the shore. "Well, that was weird as hell," Tyler muttered. Before anyone could respond, Tyler's bobber plunged beneath the surface. He yanked his rod back hard, expecting resistance, but there was almost none. The line came up easily, too easily. Dangling from his hook was a piece of gray fabric, identical to what the villager had pulled up. Same texture. Same unnatural weight despite looking so light. "Jesus," Tyler whispered, staring at the dripping cloth. Marcus checked his watch. "It's only 4 p.m. The big ones come out at sunset. We're not leaving now." Tyler looked at the fabric for a long moment, then made a decision. He grabbed it with 2 fingers, grimacing at the cold, slimy texture, and tossed it into a nearby trash bin. Just some dumped garbage. Nothing to freak out about. Greg felt uneasy, but the fish kept biting. By the time darkness crept across the creek, their coolers were overflowing. They'd caught more in one day than most anglers caught in a month. As they packed up, fog began rolling off the water, thick, unnatural fog that smelled of rot and rust. The temperature dropped 10 degrees in minutes. Greg's breath came out in visible puffs as they loaded the truck. "Let's find a motel in Albany," Marcus suggested. "Hit the road fresh tomorrow morning." The friend requested. They found a cheap roadside motel on the outskirts of Albany and grabbed dinner at a diner next door. Halfway through his burger, Marcus suddenly grinned, that specific grin men get when they think they've gotten lucky. "Guys, I'm gonna need my own room tonight." "What?" Greg looked up. Marcus slid his phone across the table. On the screen was a Bumble profile. The profile picture showed a hand, pale, feminine, partially submerged in murky water with fingers slightly spread. The username was Lillian. "Met her on People Nearby," Marcus said proudly. "We've been chatting all afternoon. She wants to meet tonight." Tyler raised an eyebrow. "You're seriously meeting some random woman you matched with in the middle of nowhere? Look at her photos, man. She's gorgeous." Greg scrolled through Lillian's profile. The photos were all in black and white, artsy shots of landscapes, forests, water. Her profile claimed she was 33. There was one photo of her face, pale skin, dark hair, and a smile that looked off. Too tight. Too forced. Something else bothered Greg. He distinctly remembered turning off his People Nearby feature months ago. Too many spam accounts. Back in their shared room, Greg's phone buzzed. New friend request. Lillian. Added from People Nearby. Time, 5:17 p.m. The profile picture was the same, that pale hand in dark water. "What the hell?" Greg muttered. "Dude." Tyler's voice was sharp. He held up his own phone. Same request. Same profile. Same timestamp. They stared at each other. "This is weird," Tyler said slowly. "Like catfish scam weird. Or worse." Greg knocked on Marcus's door. "Hey man, we both got friend requests from the same girl. Something's not right." Marcus opened the door halfway, already in his jacket. "You guys are just jealous. I'll be fine. If anything weird happens, I'll yell." The door clicked shut. That night, the motel was silent. Too silent. Greg lay awake, staring at his phone. The friend request sat there waiting. He never accepted it. The morning after. When Marcus finally appeared in the motel lobby the next morning, he looked terrible. Dark circles hung under his bloodshot eyes. His clothes were wrinkled and damp with sweat. But what caught Greg's attention immediately was the shirt. A gray t-shirt that was obviously several sizes too small. The collar cut into Marcus's neck, leaving a red ring on his skin. The sleeves barely reached his wrists, stretched to their limits. The fabric was stained with sweat and reeked of fish. Not fresh fish, but the putrid stink of something that had been rotting underwater. "Rough night?" Tyler smirked. Marcus rubbed his face. "Don't even start." She texted saying she was in the lobby. "I waited for 3 hours. She never showed. Stopped responding to messages. Calls went straight to voicemail." "So, where'd you get that shirt?" Greg asked carefully. Marcus looked down, confused. "What? This? I don't know. Must have grabbed it from my bag." But Greg and Tyler had seen Marcus's bag. The shirt wasn't in it. The drive home was unbearable. The smell coming off Marcus filled the car. Fish, decay, and something chemically sharp like old metal. They drove with all the windows down despite the freezing November air. Greg's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. "Lillian, where are you? Lillian, I want to see you. Lillian, do you have a girlfriend? Lillian, why won't you answer me?" Tyler, finding the whole thing amusing now, accepted the friend request. He sent Lillian a fake photo and claimed he was a police detective investigating the area. "Lillian, I'm coming for you." Then nothing. Radio silence. They parted ways at a rest stop, each heading home. Greg felt an enormous relief as he watched Marcus drive away, that gray shirt visible through the rear window. The desk. That night at 10:47 p.m., a message appeared in the fishing forum group chat. "Marcus is dead." Greg's blood turned to ice. The details came in fragments. Marcus's body had been found in the drainage ditch behind his apartment complex. He was still wearing that gray t-shirt, But now the fabric had somehow constricted, shrinking even tighter. The collar had compressed his throat. The sleeves had cut into his wrists so severely that his hands and forearms had turned black with necrosis, the tissue dying from lack of blood flow. The medical examiner ruled it asphyxiation, but there was no water in his lungs. And when they cut the shirt off his body, they found something that made even the seasoned detective vomit. Dozens of rusted fishhooks had been sewn into the interior lining, their barbs embedded in Marcus's skin. Fishing line was wrapped around his neck, throat, and wrists, pulled tight like a grotesque net. Greg tried calling Tyler. No answer. He tried again. And again. Voicemail. 2 days later, Tyler's body was discovered in the decorative fountain outside his office building. Same gray t-shirt. Same constricted fabric. Same fishhooks sewn inside. Same fishing line wrapped around his purple, swollen limbs. The autopsy photos leaked online showed his face frozen in an expression of absolute terror, his eyes bulging, his tongue blackened. The truth. Greg didn't sleep. Couldn't sleep. He paced his apartment, jumping at every sound. His phone sat on the counter, that pending friend request still glowing on the screen. He realized the pattern. Marcus had accepted the request and met her. Tyler had accepted it and engaged with her. Both were dead. Greg was the only one who'd never clicked accept. But for how long would that protect him? At 3 a.m., Greg grabbed his keys and drove through the night back to Chatham. The roads were empty, his headlights cutting through thick fog that seemed to follow him from the highway to the back roads. He found a dingy bar near Blackwater Creek, the Rusty Hook Tavern. The bartender, a grizzled man in his 60s named Earl, served him whiskey and tried to avoid eye contact. "I need to know about Blackwater Creek," Greg said. "About the clothes in the water. About Lillian." Earl's jaw tightened. "You one of those fishermen from the city? 2 of my friends are dead. I need answers." Earl poured himself a shot and knocked it back before speaking. 5 years ago there was a girl worked here. Ella Morrison. Pretty thing, 26 years old. She met some guy on Bumble, rich lawyer from Boston. They started dating, moved in together up in one of those rental cabins by the creek. Earl's voice dropped lower. 3 months later he wanted out. She asked for $30,000 to walk away. They fought. He strangled her. Right there in the cabin. Greg's hands trembled around his glass. Then he cut her up, Earl continued, his face pale. Arms, legs, head. Put the pieces in garbage bags weighted down with rocks. Dumped them in Blackwater Creek, right in that section you boys were fishing. The room seemed to tilt. Greg gripped the bar to steady himself. A month later, some local fisherman snagged her shirt on his line, that gray t-shirt she always wore. Pulled it up, got spooked, but didn't cut the line like he should have. That night, his wife found him in their bathtub, drowned. Wearing that same shirt, even though it was still in evidence lockup. Cops said it was impossible, but there it was. Earl leaned closer. After that, it kept happening. Her clothes would get hooked. Anyone who pulled them up and didn't cut the line, she'd come for them. Add them on social media. That picture of a hand in the water? That's her hand. The one the lawyer cut off. But why? Greg whispered. Why does she do it? She drowned Greg. He held her under the water until she stopped fighting. The coroner said she inhaled so much creek water, her lungs looked like rotten sponges. She spent her last moments choking, gasping, feeling her lungs fill up with that black, oily water. Earl's voice cracked. And now she wants others to feel what she felt. She wants them to wear her skin. To suffocate like she did. Greg felt like he might vomit. The shirt gets tighter and tighter. Squeezes the life out of you just like he squeezed it out of her. The fishhooks. That's what they used to find her. Dragged the creek bottom with hooks until they snagged her body parts. Earl's eyes were wet. She makes you wear her death. The request. Greg stumbled out of the bar at dawn. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He didn't want to look, but he had to. New friend request. Lillian. Added from people nearby. Time, 5:23 a.m. The same profile picture. The pale hand in dark water, fingers slightly curled, beckoning. But now there was a new message. Lillian, I'm here. Greg spun around. The parking lot was empty. Fog rolled across the gravel. In the distance, Blackwater Creek churned sluggishly, its black surface reflecting nothing. He looked back at his phone. The profile picture had changed. It was no longer just a hand. Now it showed a full figure, a woman submerged in murky water, her face pale and bloated, her dark hair floating around her like seaweed. Her eyes were open, milky white and dead, but her mouth was moving. And somehow, impossibly, Greg could hear her voice, not from the phone speaker but inside his head, wet and gurgling. "I just want you to know how it feels." Greg dropped his phone. It clattered on the gravel. On the screen, the friend request was still there, pulsing, waiting. In the distance, the fog over Blackwater Creek began to thicken. And from somewhere in that gray void, Greg heard the sound of splashing. Slow, deliberate. Something pulling itself out of the water. He ran for his car, his hands shaking so badly he could barely get the key in the ignition. The engine roared to life. As he tore out of the parking lot, he looked in the rearview mirror. There, at the edge of the fog, stood a figure in a gray t-shirt. Watching. Waiting. And Greg knew, with terrible certainty, that no matter how far he drove, she would find a way to make him accept that request. Because she was so very patient. And she had all the time in the world. The end.